Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We have got a packed 2 hours for you. Sal Capaccio going to join us in a little bit to talk Bills. Raheem Mostert going to join us today. Ross Tucker, we've got you covered all over the place. But Caroline, we start the next 2 hours with chaos. We start the next 2 hours with controversy. We start the next 2 hours with the story in sports that the entire world is exploding about. We found out yesterday Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer, thanks to a great article that is worth reading from Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham. The eight time, say it again, 8 times, say it with my chest, 8-time Super Bowl winning head coach fell short of the 40 out of 50 votes needed for induction to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. It should be noted they changed the voting procedures this year. Many voters are pointing to the fact that 5 men were up in this one particular side category over here. You had to vote for 3 of 5. There's nuance to why it's possible he was left off the ballot. At least that's what some people are trying to shove down our throats. But Caroline, this is, I think, the most embarrassing day in Pro Football Hall of Fame history.
This is so stupid. And look, Fitz, you mentioned chaos and controversy. I love chaos and controversy. It's part of the reason why I love the NFL. I think the NFL is one of the world's greatest soap operas. But this is just dumb. This is stupid. This is inexplicable. This is a total and complete stain on Canton, on the Pro Football Hall of Fame, a gold jacket, the penultimate honor in all of professional football. This is a massive indictment on the entirety of the process. Because if not Bill Belichick, then who? Like, I will admit, we throw the term first ballot Hall of Famer around probably far too much. But first ballot Hall of Famer, to me, is reserved for the people who deserve it. I almost feel like sometimes we need like a secondary Hall of Fame for people like Tom Brady, for people like Bill Belichick, who have careers and who have resumes that are just far and beyond what anyone else has accomplished in this sport. Bill Belichick has 8 Super Bowls, 6 as a head coach. Bill Belichick is the second winningest coach in the history of the National Football League. Bill Belichick has rewritten the history books of the National Football League. Bill Belichick changed culture in the NFL. You know how many times we've talked about the Belichick way and the Patriot way? How many players and former coaches that come from the Belichick and the Patriots coaching tree? Mike Vrabel comes from the Belichick tree, not as a coach, but as a player. He's now coaching in the Super Bowl. Even though Bill's no longer in the National Football League, we still feel his presence and his DNA scattered throughout the entirety of the National Football League. First ballot Hall of Famer is reserved for people like Bill Belichick. I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not even really like a Bill Belichick fan. But real recognize real. And I can acknowledge when somebody deserves something and is really the poster child for a certain honor. And that is what Bill Belichick is for being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Shame on all of the voters who did not vote for Bill Belichick. This is so embarrassing for the Hall of Fame.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, they always say in comedy that if you have to explain your joke afterwards, the joke was not well written. If you have to explain your process afterwards, if you have to sit here and say, wait, it could be a technicality, then your process is broken. Now, I want to make it very clear. I have friends that vote in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Some of the best mentors in my career. My life was changed by John McClain, who's a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter. So I want to make it very clear that I'm not talking about every Hall of Fame voter here. I am talking about the Hall of Fame voters that decided for whatever reason not to vote for Belichick. Some have said it could be because they wanted to make sure other votes went to other people because Belichick's eventually going to get in. That's a failed logic.
That's not how it works.
I've heard many, 100%. I've heard many people talk about Spygate and Deflategate, and I will say loudly to the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, that's not your punishment to divvy out. At the end of the day, any rings that that belong to the New England Patriots in years that you might find controversial, we're not taken back. Any wins during that time were not revoked. The NFL gave their punishments for what they felt those controversies were. who the hell do the Hall of Fame voters think they are to turn around and then repunish, especially when the bylaws of the Pro Football Hall of Fame say the only thing that you can take into account is what they did on the field. Remember, there are murderers and rapists in the NFL Hall of Fame that can't be taken out of it because the bylaws specifically say, OJ, it doesn't matter what you did off the field, you are still a Hall of Famer. There's certainly been controversy around guys like Lawrence Taylor post their playing career. They're still Hall of Famers. So let's separate everything and just talk about what you're supposed to talk about. The result. The problem here isn't just that he was left off. The problem is that the system and the process is broken. And the biggest problem with that is transparency. I want to know every single voter's path. I want to know every single voter's vote. And I think we deserve that. We deserve that in society as a whole. I have said many times on this show, I think I'm the only person in the history of the world to get a vote for the best wide receiver in college football, the Biletnikoff Award, and a Grammy vote for my work in music. And you know what? If they want to publicize that every year, every day, of course, I'm all in for that. Because if I have the honor and the privilege of voting and I treat it with the respect that it deserves, and frankly, I know most Hall of Fame voters that I've ever talked to treat it with great deference. If I'm willing to put all that work into it, then hell yeah. Tell the world who I voted for. Right now, the Pro Football Hall of Fame needs to turn around and they need to make the Belichick vote public. And if your question is why, my answer is accountability. If someone did not vote for Bill Belichick, then I question their worthiness of being a Hall of Fame voter. I want to say that loud and proud, even if I'm pissing my own friends off. At the end of the day, if you put your needs, if you put your opinions, if you put your feelings ahead of what that man accomplished on the football field, you don't deserve to vote anymore. The very people that are deciding who end up in the Hall of Fame should have their ability to continue to make those decisions decided on by the way that they did it. It's absolutely asinine to me that nobody's going to step up and tell us exactly who voted for who. I want to know who didn't vote for Bill. I then want them to justify why, and I believe that the entire Pro Football Hall of Fame should turn around and ask themselves why those ladies and gentlemen that chose not to vote for Bill Belichick still deserve a chance year in and year out to decide who a Hall of Famer is.
I do believe in transparency in everything, in every decision that anyone makes in sports and in life. I would appreciate more transparency in the Hall of Fame voting process because for somebody to justify not voting for one of the greatest coaches in the history of this sport, probably one of the greatest coaches in the history of sport, period. If they want to justify it and saying, well, we wanted to vote for other people who may not be on the ballot in the future, that's not good enough for me. That's not how the process works. That is totally twisting and manipulating the voting process. You don't get to do that. You don't get to justify it by saying, well, Bill will get in at some point. We're not that worried about Bill. No, you vote for who is worthy to be in the Hall of Fame based off of this ballot, point blank, period. You're not allowed to manipulate the process. So transparency, I would hope and would think, I could justify in saying that transparency could eliminate manipulation in the process. Now, we've heard a lot of thought that, like you mentioned, Deflategate and Spygate are the reason why some people didn't vote for Bill Belichick to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I've heard Bill Polian's name thrown out there a lot, that reportedly he was one that was kind of politicking with some of the voters to leave Bill out and have him serve that 1 year penance, so to speak, for Spygate and Deflategate. Now, I know Bill Polian's name is always going to be attached to the New England Patriots in a negative way. I know Patriots fans, Patriot Nation, probably a lot of front office members from those great Patriot teams probably don't like Bill Polian very much. But, when Bill Polian was interviewed, there's a great article on ESPN.com. And he said that Polian denied telling fellow voters that Belichick should serve a 1 year penance for Spygate. He said, quote, he've heard some fellow voters float that idea, but insisted he didn't agree or disagree with the proposal. He said he couldn't remember 100% if he voted for Belichick, but he was 95% sure that he voted for the coach and a player, most likely Greenwood. That sounds a little fishy to me. I don't know, Fitz, if I 100% totally and completely believe that. I'm not going to agree or disagree with people who were anti-Belichick going in this year. I'm like 95% sure that I voted for Bill Belichick. So I don't want to just point the finger at Bill Polian, because surely it's not just him. There are at least 10 people who didn't vote for Bill Belichick, but that feels a little fishy to me.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he doesn't remember who he voted for in the process feels really problematic. You're saying fishy. I'll go farther. It feels problematic to me. Like, you're a voter in something that takes a person's entire life work and then decides what the value of it is. Like, I'm stunned by this. And my question for Bill Polian, if in fact Bill Polian did sort of lobby the room, or to whoever did lobby the room to have Spygate and Deflategate factor into the Belichick decision, my question then becomes, is that going to apply to Brady too? Like, are you going to put where your mouth is and then all of a sudden not vote in Tom Brady as a first ballot Hall of Famer? Is that the inevitability? Like, I mean, that all right. I mean, we haven't heard anything about Kraft, who was part of that same group of 5 players. And Kraft has been lobbying to get included into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, hot and heavy behind the scenes, for a long time. We haven't heard anything about that. And frankly, if Bill Polian is standing up saying, I'm 95% certain and I think I voted for another player too, this again becomes a moment where, let us see it. I mean, I've seen some Pro Football Hall of Famers on Twitter, and for anyone that doesn't know, you're not supposed to tell anybody how you voted. That's the way that they work this. Now, some Hall of Famers are just out here in the streets letting everybody know, hey, this is how I voted. I really don't care how they feel about it. Some Hall of Famers are saying, we don't talk about who we voted, but I can tell you I'd have no problem if there was transparency. We're seeing a lot of tweets from some people. If Bill Polian's 95% sure and says he didn't start this, and there's controversy around the report, that controversy could be cleaned up by one thing: show us the vote. Right? Like, the NFL could respond to this ESPN article by showing us Bill Polian's vote. Like, that's a very simple solution. If he didn't lobby the room, if he wasn't trying to keep him out, if he's not 100% sure who he voted for, if it's going to leave question marks, Caroline, you can answer the question marks pretty easy. You just got to show us the vote. It just keeps coming back to that. And your point on Kraft is an important one, because we have not yet heard if Robert Kraft has advanced and is going to make the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If Kraft makes the Hall of Fame and Belichick doesn't, I just don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say if we are really going to be in a society where we're going to reward ownership over the greatest coach of all time, at least in our generation. I can't make that make sense in my mind.
We even had this discussion a couple months ago about, would Kraft even get into the Hall of Fame, because the owners don't have a very long or rich history of getting into the Hall of Fame. The only reason why Robert Kraft would get into the Hall of Fame is because of that man and because of Tom Brady. If Robert Kraft gets in this go around before Bill Belichick, shame on everybody involved.
Yeah, 100%. We will, of course, get more details on this. We're going to ask our guests about it along the way. This is a controversial day in the NFL, so we got you covered. No matter what we hear coming up, we will get that figured out. But coming up next, we're going to figure out what's going on in Buffalo. They have made a hire. They're bringing in Joe Brady. Sal Capaccio going to join us. We'll get his thoughts of how Bills fans and Bills Mafia feel about all of this.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out, because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight, and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knippel and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see, he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knippel. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70, and then like the air went out of the ball for a month, and it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
I didn't think the Bills would promote from within. Really thought they'd go in a brand new direction. The next step is to see who Brady's assistants are, people on staff he might keep. That tweet from Sal Capaccio talking about the surprising to many hire yesterday of Joe Brady, the new head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Sal joins us from right now. Sal joins us right now. I should learn how to speak. You can check him out, WGR 550 in Buffalo. Obviously, Sal, really appreciate it. Give me your thoughts now that we've had about 24 hours to let it sit in. Where are you on Joe Brady as the next head coach for the Bills?
Well, listen, I was surprised that the Bills went in-house only for one reason, which was the messaging from Terry Pegula last week to say that they moved on from Sean McDermott because of the what he referred to it as the hitting the proverbial playoff wall. I thought that was a message that they were going to go outside the organization, new voice, new direction. And then you hire somebody who's been on, Sean McDermott's leadership staff as a coordinator, who's been a part of hitting the proverbial playoff wall. So from that aspect, I was surprised. However, we all knew that Josh Allen would be a big part of this process because it was told to us that that would be the case. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's the most important person in your franchise. He's entering the back half of his career. He's making $55 million a year. And Josh Allen has a good relationship with Joe Brady. He trusts Joe Brady. So to elevate him, to make him the next head coach and keep that continuity, that aspect was not a surprise to me. So I think there's just a lot of nuance here in how a lot of this went down.
I've thought when you move on from a coach the caliber of Sean McDermott, you better upgrade. So my question for you, is Joe Brady an upgrade over Sean McDermott?
Well, I don't know. That's a really tough question to kind of a loaded question, right? I mean, I don't really know how to answer that. I think that there's things that there's things you're going to lose with Sean, no doubt. There's things you're going to gain with Joe. Sean McDermott was incredible at what he did. Detail-oriented, really built an incredible culture here in Buffalo. A big reason for the Bills' success over the last 9 years is because of what Sean McDermott was able to do after 17 years of not being in the playoffs. There's also, I think, a lot of Sean McDermott that comes with him, which is there's a lot of pressure to work under Sean McDermott. He's very, very on top of every single thing that happens inside the building. And I think eventually after 9 years of not getting somewhere, that pressure can kind of build on people. So I think Joe Brady brings a little bit of a different perspective and different demeanor. And not that Sean's not a nice guy. He certainly is, and I have a good relationship with him. But Joe Brady is high energy, positive guy, walks in the building. I think could be a little bit of a, take a sigh of relief type of, okay, let's kind of be a little bit more open here and creative and what we can do. Maybe there's not as much of the digging in on the details, but the bigger picture stuff. So I think upgrade is just a tough word to use. I don't know. We'll see at the end of the day. At the end of the day, Joe Brady's got to get to a Super Bowl because he was hired to replace the man who was very successful, but was let go because he couldn't get to a Super Bowl.
So what do we make of – I'm just imagining the sales pitch. The first thing you got to explain to ownership is what you're going to do that McDermott didn't do. So is this some indication in your mind that maybe Joe Brady and Sean McDermott weren't always on the same page?
I don't know if Joe Brady and Sean McDermott weren't. I think there are indications that could be the case, Jason, but I think it's more of an indication of what happened here over the last 8-9 years. And when you're in the look, I understand that people from the outside, they watch the press conference, they see this, there's all the memes, there's all the jokes, there's, oh my God, there's disaster in Buffalo. I think when you're in it and you see it and you've been around it every day like I have for many years, you see how maybe the relationship kind of has eroded a little bit. Maybe there was a disconnect between Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane more than anything. And there was a clear message, I think, in that press conference last week that, hey, look, Brandon Beane's not just picking players and giving them to Sean McDermott and say, go coach them. What he's doing is he's working collaboration. But over the last, couple of years, it felt like maybe there was a little bit of strain on, okay, maybe I'm not getting the people that I need to coach the way I want to coach. And Brandon Beane saying, well, what do you need? And Keon Coleman gets thrown into the fray, catching strays, as the kids say, right? Keon Coleman's name gets brought up in that conversation. So to answer your specific question, I could see that there could be maybe Sean McDermott and Joe Brady not on the same type of page as far as what offense he wants to run. But at the end of the day, it was Joe Brady's offense, and they were still number 2 and then number 4, respectively, over the last 2 years in points scored, which is really good, obviously.
Okay, you mentioned the Keon Coleman thing. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I would love to get your local perspective on it. So Terry Pagula said, it was the coaching staff's decision to draft Keon Coleman, and then they go on to promote somebody from the coaching staff. But it was ultimately Brandon Beane's decision. Of course, he's the general manager. He's the one that picks the players, but also Brandon Beane got promoted as well. So is there something that we're missing here?
Yeah, there's a lot there, right?
There's a lot to unpack.
100%. So I think coaching staff can mean a lot of things. I believe that Bills wide receivers coach Adam Henry also, would be in this mix of who wants Keon Coleman. I think he was at his pro day when you go back to Florida State. It doesn't have to be Joe Brady push for him. It doesn't have to be Sean McDermott push for him. It doesn't even have to be Adam Henry specifically push for him. I think that it was, hey, we need this type of receiver. We like this guy. Who on the coaching staff? We don't know that. We don't know all the intricate details of which coach wanted him or didn't want him and all those kinds of things. And then there's Brandon Beane, who, again, let's go back to the clear message I think that came out of last week for me more than anything was the Bills wanted to intentionally make sure that everybody knew that Brandon Beane worked in partnership with his coaches and his coaching staff to find the best players that they wanted to add. And it wasn't just, I'm picking players, this is my roster, and you go coach them. So he brings up the question was about wide receivers. Terry interrupts and says, hey, let me just say, Keon Coleman was a guy that the coaching staff wanted. And probably Terry should probably not have said that. There's no doubt, because now it becomes a story. Now we're talking about Keon Coleman on a day where we should be talking about Sean McDermott and being fired. But I think that the overall point was he was trying to make, hey, there are players on this staff that Brandon Beane really kind of acquiesced maybe to what the coaches wanted. And now suddenly you put Keon Coleman out there, and let's remember, Keon Coleman has been benched twice by this coaching staff or that coaching staff for being tardy. There's a lot. He has not been as productive on the field. And now they're saying, well, we're detaching ourselves from that particular pick. But then at the same time, you've kind of plummeted his value if you want to go out there and move him after that's being said, which is why later Brandon Beane's like, look, he's still young. We still have a lot of faith in him. So I think there's just a lot there. But I think Keon Coleman just became kind of an example and representation of what they were trying to tell us.
Sal, there's been a lot made for Josh Allen too, right? Like the reports that he was going to have a hand in picking, and now we've seen, okay, he was in some of the interviews but didn't have any part of the narrowing of candidates. I can't figure out where we are. What does all of this sort of say to you about Josh Allen with the organization?
There is no way the Bills hire Joe Brady or anybody else without Josh Allen's endorsement. There's just no way it's just not happening. When John Harbaugh was fired, well before Sean McDermott was fired, and there was this talk about Lamar and having a seat at the table, and my thought was absolutely he should. He's the most important person in the organization. Your franchise quarterback has to be on board and comfortable with the person you're bringing in. And then when Sean McDermott gets fired, I felt the same thing about Josh Allen. Look, he's going to be 30 years old. He's still young enough, but also on the probably second half of his career starting here, where he's going to be 30 years old this year. He's making $55 million. He's the reigning, as of right now, league MVP. He's a finalist again this year. He's the most important person in this organization. You have to absolutely make sure that he is on board with this and at least endorse it. And if not him saying, this is the guy I want, at least it's not. You're not going to hire a guy he says, I don't want. So when they say he's going to be a part of the process, you learn, okay, he's in the interviews, he's listening in, all that. We don't know what that means. Now it comes out where, hey, well, he didn't actually pick the guy. He doesn't have that power. He's not narrowing the candidates down. So I think there's an intentionality here, if I will, to say, okay, yes, Josh Allen was a part of kind of listening in on all of this, but we want to make sure we make it clear this was our choice. Josh Allen didn't have the power to pick the coach. And I think the Bills are trying to give that message out.
You are so firmly ingrained in the fabric of Buffalo sports talk. You are the face of Buffalo Bills fans, Buffalo sports fans. How do you feel about the Buffalo Bills organization right now?
Well, right now you have on your screen number 17, and that's what matters here more than anything. It doesn't matter all the changes you can make. The Bills have Josh Allen, and when they have Josh Allen, they can have the ability to win any game, win in any season, have the ability to go to a Super Bowl. I push back on the notion that, oh my God, there's so many holes on this roster. Sure. Is it a complete roster? No. Is it as good as it has been? No. Let's remember, the Bills still had the leading rusher in the NFL this year, one of the best offensive lines in the league, although took a step back in pass protection with Josh and sacks. Yes, one of the best offensive lines. They were the number one defense in pass defense this year. You don't do that without having good players on your roster. They still have a really good organization. You're right about when you say that. I've been here long enough and I grew up here and now I cover the team professionally. I've been through the downs and I've been through the ups. And we went 17 years here in Buffalo of changing head coaches and changing general managers and not having playoff appearances. And now, even though you're going through a bit of a rough patch and the whole kind of way it's looking around the nation doesn't look great, doesn't feel great, the Bills still have Brandon Beane running an organization that he brought into this organization, Brian Gaine and Terrence Gray and Joe Shane and Dan Morgan and people who are very, very good at building an organization and being in charge of it. So I understand there's a lot of angst from Bills fans. I get it. I'm not going to deny that. But I think if you take a step back and look at the 30,000 foot view, the Bills are still a really, really good in a good spot right now because of the people they have.
There's no doubt. I'm not disputing that at all, Sal. I feel like the Bills, though, have sent us two distinct messages since their season ended abruptly. One was not winning the Super Bowl with Josh Allen is not good enough, so we're going to fire Sean McDermott. Now, I can't help but feel like the message we're getting today is we looked around and we feel like Sean McDermott's the reason we weren't winning a Super Bowl. Like, if it's Super Bowl or bust and everything else is staying in place, it feels like they are putting the weight of the world on Sean McDermott for his failure in accomplishing that goal and absolving everybody else. Is that the right way to approach it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good way to look at it because I think that by hiring Joe Brady, someone who's on staff, you could say, well, we've removed the reason why we didn't do it, right? And I think that's what you're saying, Jason, and that would be Sean McDermott. And it's certainly a valid way to look at it, especially after Terry Pegula says, great roster, good coaching. Those were the 4 words he used, actually, right? Which is really interesting. I would say, though, now the weight is really on Joe Brady because you're right. This is not a retool. This is not a step back. This is not a rebuild. The Bills aren't doing that. They're still paying Josh Allen $55 million a year and have this roster that they expect to win the Super Bowl. Joe Brady has to do that. I mean, he has to get to a Super Bowl. If we're sitting here a year from now, you guys are having me on this show and saying, why did the Bills lose in the AFC divisional round? This is not a step up hire because the step up hire is meaning not the person himself, but the results. The results have to be better than what they have. Now, Terry Pegula said in the press conference last week, I'm not going to tell a coach it's Super Bowl or bust. And I understand that. You can't bring a coach and say that and put that pressure on in the interview. But let's be honest here. Like, the Bills have to get to where they haven't been because of this quarterback and where he is in his career. And that's the weight you're putting on. And I'll also say, I think because of going back to what I said about Josh Allen has to be on board with this, right? You're not going to hire a guy he's uncomfortable with. I think there's a lot of pressure on Josh Allen now and say, look, obviously we hired a guy that he's comfortable with, was in this offense with, has a relationship with, kept the continuity with. So he has to have some ownership of this, right? With Joe Brady and getting to the ultimate goal of getting to a Super Bowl and winning it.
Ooh, the pressure is insurmountable. But what are some coordinator names to keep an eye on?
So offensively, I don't think it matters as much because I think Joe is going to call plays from what I understand, just so everybody knows. I think Joe's still going to call plays, which makes sense, right? So whoever he brings in as offensive coordinator would have that in title, but they wouldn't actually call the plays. It's not as important, but there's a lot of talk about if they could get Davis Webb here from Denver because there's a relationship and they all work together and Davis loves Buffalo. He's been here in the room with Josh Allen. I would say Ronald Curry, who's on staff right now, who Joe brought over from New Orleans when he was offensive coordinator. Ronald Curry's the quarterback's coach. Maybe he gets elevated. But that being said, we'll see where that goes. The bigger hire is going to be the defensive coordinator. There's no doubt about it. Right now, Bobby Babich is still on staff. I wouldn't expect him to necessarily be the next defensive coordinator or remain defensive coordinator, especially now that we've heard Jim Leonard's name pop up. And I think this is really key and interesting, guys, which is you've had a defensive head coach here in Sean McDermott over 9 years who's done a really great job with the defense, right? He employs a certain philosophy, keep everything in front of you, don't get beat deep, no explosives, and they've been good at that. There's no doubt. Jim Leonard is a guy who comes from the Rex Ryan tree, who he played for in Baltimore and New York. He also was a former Bill. And then he coached under Vance Joseph in Denver. And what do those two philosophies have in common? Super aggressive, getting to the quarterback, sacking the quarterback. A big reason why the Bills have failed in the playoffs over the last several years is their inability to get to the quarterback. They have not sacked Patrick Mahomes. They did not sack Bo Nix. And that is a clear indication to me that the Bills want to bring someone in who they believe, and Joe Brady believes, can maybe change that equation a little bit and have a bit of a different defensive philosophy.
In the end, do you feel better or worse about the Bills today than you did the day that their season ended?
It's a really good question. I think that I feel the same because they have Josh Allen, but I feel a little bit worse over the fact that they have instability. Because again, I'm going to go back to I know what instability looks like, and then I know stability that Sean McDermott brought and Brandon Beam brought. And every time I would do radio shows, appearances, TV, it didn't matter. Over the last 9 years, Jay, every time I would do it, I would say one thing. I would say, the Bills have what most NFL teams covet. They have stability. They have an ownership and a GM and a head coach that align. And they don't have that now. And I don't know if they do. And that's where I feel a little worse. But it doesn't mean I can't feel better after listening to Joe Brady tomorrow at his press conference, or after he makes a couple of hires, or after we start off-season workouts. As I tweeted the other day, at the end of the day, the business of football is going to get on, and the Bills still have Josh Allen at quarterback, and that's what matters most.
You're 1,000% right. Hope is a drug, and we all deserve it when we hire a new coach. Like, let's at least wait to see how it plays out before we give up on it. Follow him on social media at Sal Sports. Don't want to miss him there. And obviously, you can check him out on the Bills broadcast and on WGR 550 in Buffalo. Sal, really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for the expertise. Thanks for the insight on Buffalo.
You got it, guys. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Great
Sal.
stuff from Sal. Coming up next, speaking of instability, they have it in Cleveland, but they got a Pro Bowler. We'll talk about it next.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see, he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago, when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70, and then like the air went out of the ball for a month, and it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Here we go. That's all. I mean, just here we go. That's the perfect tweet to encapsulate where we are now. As First Take decided to find out if Deion Sanders should be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. That's where we are. We're at a spot where First Take, a show that transparently I've been on a handful of times in my life, First Take decided that they were just going to do the thing, go for the low-hanging fruit and all the ratings they could possibly get by mixing in Shedeur, Deion, and the Browns into one big old topic. Look, the Browns still don't have a coach. We could get news on that in a minute. But let's be perfectly clear here. Can we remember a time where a coach went from, oh yeah, everybody, like this was a topic that people were actually trying to make a thing not that long ago. Oh, Shedeur's going to end up coaching his son in the NFL. And then this little thing called failure at Colorado started. Like, it's amazing how the shine has just dulled on Deion, not because he got into the NFL and didn't succeed, because he stayed in the same job and hasn't succeeded.
So, not this past college football season, but the year before, right? So, Shedeur's last year at Colorado, Travis Hunter's Heisman year at Colorado. You couldn't talk about college football without talking about Colorado. They had college game day. They had some of the most watched games of the year. I mean, it was everything. Deion's first year at Colorado, when it was his first game or second game early in his tenure, when they beat TCU fresh off of a trip to the national championship game. Like, Colorado was the biggest story in college football. Fitz, do you know how many games Colorado won this past season?
Not
Do
many.
you know anyone, a single name on that Colorado roster from this past year? Did you watch
No.
any Colorado football this past year?
No. No.
No, of course not. No, and I don't say that to pick on you. I'm just saying we are people who love college football and cover college football on a daily basis. And I had to Google how many games Colorado won this past year because they were irrelevant. That is what has happened to Colorado football. Deion Sanders is 16-21 overall in his past 3 seasons at Colorado. Nobody else with a win-loss record like that would even feel safe or secure in their current job, much less even get a sniff at an NFL head coaching job. This is ridiculous. I think we can separate Deion Sanders and who he is as a person, what he's achieved as a head coach, what he did at Jackson State, what he did last year at Colorado, coached a Heisman Trophy winner. Obviously will go down as one of the greatest players, in NFL history. So exciting, so electric, just as an athlete was incredible. If we can separate who Deion Sanders was and who Deion Sanders is right now. To even entertain Deion Sanders getting an NFL head coaching job, I think is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of years before Deion and Shedeur parted ways at Colorado, it was incredible because even for us doing college football work for Yahoo, the number of times we would have to stay up later, we would have to change shows, we'd have to make sure we got Colorado into the conversation because they were so relevant. And to your point, I mean, Juju Lewis, by the way, who was, I had the opportunity to be around him a little bit his senior year in high school. Watching Juju Lewis, who was a massive 5-star recruit out of Georgia, one of the top-ranked recruits, he came into Colorado last year, and I really thought, okay, you got a 5-star quarterback coming in, you're going to be just fine. Update, they were not just fine. So, you can't even look at it and say, well, they lost Shedeur. They replaced Shedeur with a well-regarded prospect and still weren't fine. So to me, yes, all of this is just a reminder that the hype story, the sales pitch of it is so much better. This is like a movie trailer where you watch the movie trailer and you're like, yeah, count me in. And then you go to the movie and it absolutely sucks. And that's where we are. Now, that being said, even though you and I both have the common sense to realize that there's zero chance that Prime is going to be the coach of the Cleveland Browns, whoever is the next coach of the Cleveland Browns inherits a Pro Bowl quarterback. And this, over the weekend sort of blew up everywhere. Shedeur headed to the Pro Bowl. It should be noted he's headed to the Pro Bowl because injuries and, you've got Drake May in the Super Bowl, which took him out of the Pro Bowl. Then you've got some injuries. Then they just start going down the list. Click, tick, 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 tick. And I believe he was the 5th runner-up, but he ends up being a Pro Bowl quarterback, even though he wasn't initially in that because he was next man up, and he said yes. But, Caroline, I think it's important to note that we need to start to change some of our conversation around Pro Bowls when we start to see guys that just simply don't belong in that game.
Yes. And again, I do want to couch this by saying we don't hate Shedeur Sanders. For some reason, whenever you just call it like it is with someone, you are all of a sudden painted as a certain light. This isn't about Shedeur Sanders. This is about the Pro Bowl process, in my opinion. For so long, we have used Pro Bowls, the number of Pro Bowls that you get to, all pros. We've used those as measuring sticks. We've used that for Hall of Fame resumes. We've used that for evaluation of rosters of, this roster's got 18 Pro Bowls on it. This guy went to 7 Pro Bowls. It used to mean something, in my opinion. It used to be a little gold star on your resume. But over the last couple of years, we've had Tyler Huntley in the Pro Bowl. We've had Gardner Minshew in the Pro Bowl. We've had Steelers Russell Wilson in the Pro Bowl. And now we have Shedeur Sanders in the Pro Bowl after a year of throwing 7 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions. An average, totally average QBR for any quarterback for a season is around 50. Shedeur Sanders had an 18.9 QBR. Shedeur Sanders, sure, he showed flashes. I think he showed enough that if the next Browns coach wants to come in and have Shedeur as your starting quarterback next season, like, I don't disagree with that. But Shedeur Sanders is not a Pro Bowler. Shedeur Sanders has not earned that right, and he will get it, and he'll get the experience, and I hope that he has the best time. I hope he enjoys it. Great. Good for Shedeur Sanders. But when we look at the Pro Bowl as a resume booster moving forward, I think we're going to have to tweak our thinking a little bit because it just doesn't mean the same thing that it used to mean.
No, 1,000%, because we've gotten smarter and the game has gotten worse and we're more informed and we understand better than ever. Like, the thing of it is, there are some contracts that have Pro Bowl appearances worked into them. There are bonuses, and you're right, there's even Hall of Fame conversations. Well, he went to X amount of Pro Bowls. I think in 15 years, it'll be interesting to see if that's even brought up. But you bring up something just in this general conversation that I think leads to just a really painfully honest conversation about Shedeur, right? Like, we're in this world where if you say anything negative about Shedeur, suddenly you're painted some sort of way. I would ask this. If you believed that the problem was Kevin Stefanski, and if you believed that the Browns lucked out on Shedeur getting all the way to the 5th round simply because the rest of the league was trying to teach him a lesson, if you believed that Shedeur is the most undervalued prospect in generations because they let him go through this long draft process, you need to open your eyes today to a reality. The Browns can't find a coach. If the majority of the NFL truly believed that Shedeur Sanders was a top 10 caliber, oh my God, first-round talent at the quarterback position, with that defense, with the way that they've got that defense humming, you want to tell me that we'd be sitting here a month into this process and they still wouldn't have a coach? One of the things we say constantly is if you have a quarterback, you have a desirable job. Hell, Robert Saleh took the Titans job in part because he looked around and said, yeah, I can do it with Cam Ward. So you're telling me if you believe that the problem was the Browns or the problem was Stefanski or the problem is the NFL or the problem's all of us, the problem's never Shedeur, we're looking at Shedeur the wrong way. I guess my question is, why aren't the hot candidates fawning over each other to get the opportunity to take over a team that has a championship caliber defense and, in your minds, whoever you are, a first-round talent at the quarterback position? Part of the reason the Browns' job is open is because the Browns are dysfunctional. Part of the reason the Browns' job have had a hard time getting filled is some of the requirements we're hearing about that they make coaches go through. I think these are all part of the problems. But when you have a quarterback, if the rest of the quality coaches in the NFL believed that they had a chance at coaching a top 5 or 10 quarterback in the NFL with Shedeur, they'd look past all of that. People do it all the time. If you have a quarterback, you have a shot. I think it's telling to the actual dynamic, the actual way that Shedeur is viewed behind the scenes by the actual experts in the NFL. I think it's telling that we're looking at a ton of coaching candidates that have a ton of background with offenses and with quarterbacks, and they're looking around at this situation and saying, nah, I'm all good. I don't think this team has a clear path to a quarterback. They feel that because the right quarterback isn't in the building right now. And I realize that by saying that, there's a bunch of you on social media that are going to immediately paint me as an awful person and as a racist and as a terrible Shedeur hater. Fine. If that's the way you need to see me to hear the truth, it's fine. But I'm telling you right now, if coaches around the league believed that Shedeur was an epic superstar, the Browns would have been the first job filled because they have the rest of the roster that they need. They have the rest of the pieces they need in a division that's winnable in a competitive market. They would be a desirable job. Part of the reason they're not is because, and this isn't a hot take, they don't have a quarterback.
It's a fair point by you. Actions speak louder than words. And the actions of so many coaching candidates across the country have said, no thanks, we're good. We had Grant Udinski, who is 30 years old, actually just turned 30 years old, pull out of his coaching candidacy with the Cleveland Browns. Why? I don't know. We talked about, potentially he's far along in the interview process elsewhere and just wanted to take his name out of the Browns contention, or maybe he just doesn't want to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Look at the vacancies across the NFL right now. The Raiders, the Cardinals, the Browns. I love you, Fitzy. It's not necessarily great company to be in.
Yeah, it's the worst jobs with bad quarterback situations. It all makes sense. We won't be talking about the worst next week, but we will on this show be talking about the best because how about this? Can't wait. We are headed to San Francisco for Super Bowl week. Yahoo Sports is going to have you covered there all week long. You see the schedule there. I want to stress the schedule that you see is Pacific time because our bosses are kind and want to let us actually not have to get up at the you-know-what at dawn to do this every day. So from 9 to 11 Pacific, you'll now see Yahoo Sports Daily. Just next week, it's just a 1-week change. Gives you a little more time to get your coffee. Enjoy us on the East Coast with lunch. But right after that, you'll get inside coverage from noon to 1 Pacific, Yahoo Fantasy Forecast from 2 to 3. And then, of course, you've also have Football 301. So you got a lot happening there for you every single day. That plus we're going to have a stacked guest list. So the big superstars that always come through the Super Bowl will be represented, but we will be in San Francisco for every single ounce of it. I say it all the time. We hope you'll hang out with us. We get to go because you guys have been hanging out with us. It's an honor to get to go to San Francisco. We absolutely can't wait. We'll see if we can get Bart to come on and just say can't wait over and over again on our show. We should try and do Bart or Fart with a fart machine and Bart in the same building. That's the analysis you can only get here. Again, we're going to be live daily, 9 to 11 a.m. Pacific time next week, so be sure you're hanging out with us. All right, coming up next, from all the NFL talk to absolute, oh my God, from that man, Dabo spoke out on tampering with receipts. We'll tell you about it next.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Shemaiah versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Shemaiah versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary. 100%. Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff. He must
kind of okay
fight
with
for
it.
No, I'm not. No. I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
The NCAA confirms it is looking into Dabo Swinney's tampering accusations against Ole Miss. That's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard, that they're looking into accusations when what we got were receipts. I cannot wait for the court of Caroline's court. We're going to offer a final ruling here. We love to do this. This is where she gets to be the judge. Does that make me like, am I the what is that, the bailiff on the side? Like it's always sort of the guy with the like witty line that comes up and helps Judge Judy in the middle of that? Is that my role in this?
I think so. Where you're like cute little outfit, cute little sheriff outfit. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or
I'm wearing like.
It would be nice.
No,
it would be very nice.
I'm going full Reno 911 tiny
court.
shorts.
Bang,
Thank you so much. Hey, bang, bang. We're going to get you a gavel. Dabo went on a massive rant against Ole Miss, Pete Golding, the Rebels GM, Austin Thomas, for tampering. Not only did he go into this rant, but I should point out he read screenshots. He had proof of all of the conversation. He did it with here's who they're talking to, here's how they're doing it, exactly what they're saying. So what do you make of Dabo going to the mic with screenshots? This is like your girl going through your phone, and then she sits down next to you and she's like, "Hey, let's talk about this," and then she's just scrolling through it. He came with receipts.
Busted. Look, first of all, good for Dabo for doing that, for not just coming out and saying like something very vague, for not just like bring the receipts. Like, put 10 toes down if you're going to bring this up, and if you're going to talk about it, call out individuals and bring the receipts and don't hold back. Good for Dabo. And the reason why I say that is because I do believe, by everything that I have heard, by all reports, Dabo is a coach that does not tamper. So if a coach doesn't tamper and he wants to call out other coaches for tampering, I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is coaches calling out tampering and then turning around and tampering other rosters. We're not going to do that. No. We're not going to both be the pot and call the kettle black. But here's how I would feel if I was a Clemson fan. Instead of Dabo getting his panties all in a wad about tampering, about bringing the receipts, about calling out other coaches, this is clearly something that is rampant in college sports, and it's also not new, FYI. This has been going on since the beginning of time. Cheating in college football is something that has happened since the beginning of time. I actually had a former coach tell me that Nick Saban, quote, cheated his ass off. It is what it is. Like, the cheating has happened since the beginning of time in sports. Maybe Dabo might want to dip his toes into the pool of cheating a little bit. Maybe Dabo might want to dip his toes into the pool of tampering a little bit. If every coach across college football is doing this, if this is a competitive advantage, instead of calling it out and trying to fix a system that is unfixable, maybe you do it. Like, maybe you adjust to the times. And look, I know that sounds crazy, and so many people are going to come for me and call me a terrible person for doing that. But look, I remember a long time ago, there was an old adage in college football: if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So if this is something that every coach in America is doing, and every coach in America is getting away with, and every coach in America is getting a tactical advantage by doing, maybe you should do it yourself.
By the way, the most shocking logic of all time to come from Carolina, not me. I love every ounce of this, but there is a part of me that's like, okay, I'll go back to the weird analogies, but if you're like constantly throwing these house parties and they're ragers, and everybody in school knows that you throw these massive, oh my God, once in a lifetime parties every month, and everybody comes and gets tanked, and you've got a bunch of alcohol you shouldn't have. Well, if there's one kid that never shows up to that party over and over every year, says, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. When he finally does show up, he's probably the kid you're a little cautious in front of, right? Like, Dabo didn't want anything to do with the transfer portal for a very long time. And now, even in the transfer portal, he's still barely there compared to what other schools have done. He was the last to come to this party, and you got to feel like from the minute he walks in, he's got that sort of like, he's got that energy. He's got that narc energy from the minute he walks in. Like, he's not the guy that walks into the party for the first time and you're handing him the beer. He's the guy that you walked into the party for the first time and you're like, oh, no, there's no beer here. It's just Kool-Aid, right? Like, I think there is a little element of every coach in college football, every organization, every program in college football should look around and realize that if there's one guy that's going to come for you, and he's going to come for you with receipts, it's that man. Like, Dabo A has won. Dabo B believes that there's a way to win honestly. Dabo C believes that his way is better than the modern college football way. When you stack all those things up, I think the minute he started to dip his toe in all of this, it was almost like, I'm going to be the knight in shining armor that fixes it from within. So I'm genuinely not surprised that he came out with receipts. I do think that if there's look, I say thunder of the gods all the time. If the NCAA doesn't come down with some level of thunder of the gods with this much written proof, then man, you are just letting it be the Wild Wild West at that point. Like, if we have this much, hey, I have emails and texts and receipts from the agents, and here's what's being said by everybody, and there's no real punishment for it, the message sent will be clear. But until then, if there's any one kid that's likely to step up in front of the whole school and say, by the way, cheater, 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 it's Dabo. I'm not surprised at all that he's doing this. I'm surprised that the rest of college football didn't realize that that's probably not the one guy you want to F with in this process.
Yeah, and I think that's a lesson to learn too, is if Dabo doesn't do it, he's going to call you out for doing it. And look, I respect Dabo that if you're going to come out and call people out, bring all the receipts that you have. Good for him. Don't hold back. Don't half-ass, accusations. Do it fully. Like, take a deep dive into the deep end of accusing people for what they have done. But also at the same time, you don't get a pat on the back for following the rules. You don't get a cookie for doing it in the most honorable manner. Because there are two coaches that we have on our screen right now on the bottom, Pete Golding and Dabo Swinney. Pete Golding coached in the national semifinal game, and Dabo Swinney coached in what bowl? I don't really remember what bowl it was. Look, Dabo's won 2 national championships and have been to even more. Like, Dabo is one of the most well-respected coaches in all of college football for a reason. But that was an old era of college football, and this is a new one. I know that everyone's going to call me out for the helmet that I have behind me. I went to LSU. I'm an LSU fan. That's not something that I've ever hidden. And look, thank you. There are a lot of things that my new head coach has done that I don't really love, that it kind of makes me feel a little icky. But you know what I loved was the fact that the #1 transfer portal quarterback in the entire country committed to my school, and it came on the heels of my head coach flying to Knoxville, Tennessee, when Sam Levitt was on a recruiting trip and meeting with Josh Heupel and meeting with Tennessee, and Lane Kiffin showed up and was like, really, what are we doing here? And then Sam Levitt committed to LSU. I know it's not necessarily the most honorable thing to do. I'm sure he's pissed a lot of people off and has burned a whole lot of bridges in the process, but who's got the #1 transfer portal quarterback in the country? Lane Kiffin does. So this is not necessarily a sport of doing it the right way and following the rules. We can act like we want it to be that way. We can all pretend like everybody colors within the lines, but we all really know that coaches don't actually do that. So if Dabo is not going to do it, good for him for trying to change the system. Good for him for calling people out. Nobody is safe in this instance. And if Dabo does enact change, good for him, because I will be the first person to say that this current system of college football is unsustainable. When there is constant tampering, when there is constant, resetting of the marketplace with NIL money, there needs to be some sort of change that happens in college football. But for right now, nothing's going to change, and nobody's been punished for breaking the rules. So if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, look. At the end of the day, I will always laugh at fans that sit there and say, we're going to win the right way. You got to do it with honor. You only say that when you're the one that's losing a recruit. When you're gaining a recruit, you don't give a damn. And the next time a fan base yells at any of us about honor, my question is, if we put secret cameras all over the tailgating parking lot, how much honor do you show in the way that you respect your opponents? I'm just saying. All right, so plenty more to get to, but coming up, we've got a great guest. We're going to get some thoughts on what happened in Vegas. I've got questions for him. Raheem Mostert, friend of the show, joins the show.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to this.
Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knippel and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knippel. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scoring 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Most rushing yards in a conference championship game. I want you to pay close attention to that stat because the man at the top of that list is Raheem Mostert with 220 of them. And that record still stands after the AFC and NFC championship games of the past week. We're going to welcome him back now. You know Throne Sport Coffee has you wide awake this morning. Thanks for being here, man. I love this. A fun fact. The Raiders beat the Patriots week 1, actually tied the Seahawks way back in week 1 of the preseason. So you've seen both these teams. What's the key to this game for you between the Seahawks and the Patriots?
Obviously, the quarterback play, with Sam Darnold doing his thing right now, and then Drake May, is just having a second year, unbelievable year. He had a tough year last year. But Mike Vrabel got those boys up and running. But then, you see what's going on with Seattle and their defense. One key guy that I'm curious about, and has always played against is Leonard Williams. Growing up down here in Florida, I played against that cat, multiple times. We were actually rival high school buddies. So just seeing him just go out there and do his thing and being in this opportunity to win a Super Bowl for Seattle is amazing for the county, the state of Florida, and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. And Raheem, as you know, we always say the NFL is a copycat sport. And any team that finds themselves in the postseason, every team across the league is going to be looking at the special sauce, the formula that they have to become a championship contender, and how can they recreate that. When you look at the makeup of both of these teams, two young coaches, Drake May, a young quarterback, Sam Darnold, a true reclamation project as a quarterback in this league. What is the formula? What are the special ingredients that both of these two teams have to become championship contenders?
Obviously, and that's a great question. That's the most important thing. Having good complementary ball that plays one another, that plays well with each other. It takes all three phases. And I think that Seattle's doing an unbelievable job with that. They're just going out here, making special teams plays. You see what the return game did the last time they played against the Niners, that opening kickoff with Shaheed. It was just amazing just to start the tempo of the game. But then the run game, I'm always going to lean towards the run game just because I'm a running back and what K9's been doing these past several games. So there's a lot of different variables going around for Seattle. Now with Patriots, their defense is good enough to be there. They stopped Denver and their explosive plays, but also Denver missed out on the QB play because Bo Nix got hurt. So there's a lot of different things that can happen within the game, but I think the biggest thing is just the complementary ball aspect.
So, Raheem, you joined us early in the season, and I'm a lifelong diehard Raiders fan. You spent the last year in Vegas, and you said something to me that not only will I never forget, but I took it with me. Every time I did a national interview and people asked what was going wrong with the Raiders, I went back to one answer you gave us when you were talking. You said you've never been a part of a team that genuinely tried to win right now and rebuild at the same time. That's been stuck in my head ever since we talked. Now that we've seen that it didn't work, where did it go wrong in Vegas?
It was a lot of different things that happened throughout the season, and obviously, with that quote that I mentioned, I was truly like diehard about it, just standing on it, and I was stamping that. But in different aspects, I think is everybody that wasn't on the same page, and that's rough. That's definitely tough when you're trying to win and trying to go to the postseason and have a winning record and all this, that comes with it. But it's just tough, man, just seeing that, everybody wasn't on the same page and turnovers is a crucial thing and the level of play that, guys are playing at the same time is tough. But, there's a good group of guys that are in that locker room that want to get the job done. And, unfortunately, it just didn't happen.
Yeah, Raheem, you would admit, I'm sure, and anyone could admit that you didn't reach your goals this past
Yeah.
year in Vegas. Pete Carroll's a guy who's won championships at the college level, has won Super Bowls at the NFL level. Do you think he deserved more time to figure things out in Vegas?
That's it's kind of hard to say just because, with a coaching staff like that and the pedigree and I mean I saw a stat literally last night that said, since 2002, I believe that the Raiders have 14 different head coaches, not interim head coaches hired. That's kind of tough when you're trying to do some different things. And so with Pete, he's been at the spotlight for some X amount of years. And, like you said, he's won championships after championships, both at the college level and in the professional level. So, with him, it's kind of tough. You want to see a guy get more opportunity, but then also it's like if you were ownership, if you were, Tom Brady, if you were, Brandon and all those guys, or yeah, it's tough. It's tough that you get to see these guys that come in at the head coaching job for 1 year and then be gone. You don't want that to happen, and with Pete, I mean, I was bought in, but a lot of the guys, I wouldn't say a lot of the guys weren't bought in. It was just, sometimes it could be forced energy, and sometimes it could be energy that's, guys that aren't really about it. And so it's just tough, man. And that year, yeah, man, last year was just I wanted like Max. Like I'm looking at this video, this photo right now of Max, and I'm like, Max been there for so long, and I want him to win. There's guys that been there for X amount of years, and they've been going through coaching changes like it's nobody's business, and you want them to win. So I'm excited for the opportunity for the Raiders and to see how that goes and who they hire.
With that being said, you mentioned Brady quickly. From the outside looking in, everybody keeps talking about how involved is Brady. You were in that building. How much of a presence did Tom Brady have in the way that your year went with the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean with Brady, and I have a great relationship with Tom. He's one of my guys. He was so thankful that I was on the team and just said, hey, look, let's just keep it going. Let's stick around and let's figure this thing out. And he was not as much involved as you would think. But I think that, for him being a first time part owner of the organization, he just wanted to see how it goes. He wanted to see what it feels like to be in that role in a position, that he could really be effective and also be in a spotlight where, he's just trying to see how everything maneuvers. It's just like you owning a business, right? You don't know necessarily the ins and outs until you get into it, right? And for him, he was into it. But now I feel like this next year, he's really gonna, take his time and really, put his expertise on the table and be like, hey, look, this is what we need to do.
And now the Raiders have the number one overall pick. So
Yeah.
much of the Raiders' future hinges on what happens this offseason and in this draft. As AC Fitz getting so excited about the number one overall pick.
I gotta have
we're
hope
talking
somewhere. Come on,
futures.
man.
Yeah, you do.
Hey, if we don't have hope, we don't have anything. But speaking of futures, what does your future hold?
Yeah, I was signed with the Raiders for this past season. I was on a 1 year deal. I'm going into I just completed my 11th season. I'm a father of four.
Congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Father of four, and I had a good conversation with my agent, Chris Cabot, over at Equity Sports, and I was talking with him for about an hour, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I told him, hey, look, I'm on another year. I can't go out this like this. That's something that I just on my conscience, I can't do that. So I'm gonna go for another round. And hopefully there's a team out there that wants me. But in the meantime, I'm gonna continue to be a father to my kids right now, be present, be, going to these T-ball practices. I don't know anything about baseball. But obviously, I got to go to these practices. I got like three lined up on Saturday. It's crazy. So I'm just excited about the opportunity and be a businessman. That's one thing. Actually, with sport, coffee with Throne, I'm trying to elevate that. So just trying to do all the little things.
Look, for anyone that doesn't know, for players, it means so much to get to 10 years. That's a mark that players really care about. For you to get to 11 as a running back is absolutely insane. We were talking about my hope a little bit. I get hope from Fernando Mendoza because quarterbacks give you hope. But you went to Purdue. So were you able to enjoy any of the Indiana run as a Purdue guy?
No, I was not. I do not like Purdue. I can't stand, or I do not like Indiana. I can't stand Indiana. I grew up actually a Hurricane fan, so it was like perfect timing, but it was sad because I was in my house and I'm watching the TV and I'm like, God, like Indiana out of all teams, like the one, like I never thought in a million years, like since the time I was alive, that I would see Indiana ranked first off, and then let alone win a national championship. It's crazy. Like it speaks volume. But with Indiana, I saw something like they had like 36 transfers and or 46 transfers, and man, this portal stuff is crazy. Like I just my years at Purdue, I was just I had the opportunity to transfer because we had a new coaching change the end of my sophomore year. And I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna just stick around. That's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna ride it out. And thankfully I did. But I could have transferred easily if we were in that transfer portal stage. But me being who I am as a man and as a person, I committed to a university, and I'm gonna stand by that. And sometimes it's tough seeing what's going on right now in this portal scene. You get these young guys that they go from one team one year to the next, and then they get paid, and then all of a sudden, they're entering the portal with like 4,000 other kids. It's ridiculous, man. And I know you guys. I love this segment what y'all said about Dabo and all that. The last segment. I just don't know, man. I just feel like it's just a waste of time just entering the portal. As a man, you need to be committed and go through the hard times, the hardships, and that's what makes you tough. And then when you get into the league, everything else is easier. You're not looking for another paycheck. You're making millions already. It's absurd. I don't agree with it.
And it's such great perspective coming from someone who lived it. And it's
hmm
so hard too if you want to preach that message to some of these guys that are considering entering the transfer portal. But you look at guys like Fernando Mendoza, who transferred
Yeah.
into Indiana. I don't think anybody really knew who he was at Cal. Transfers to Indiana. Now he's going to be the #1 overall pick. Michael Penix Jr. started at Indiana and then was a Heisman Trophy finalist at Washington. Jaden Daniels won it that year. Transferred to LSU from Arizona State. I don't think anybody would know who Joe Burrow was if he stayed a backup at Ohio State. So it's tough for you when you look at so many transfer portal success stories that are at the forefront of all of the biggest stories in sports. But what we don't see is all of the thousands of kids who just kind of stay stuck in the transfer portal.
Yeah, exactly. With those thousands of kids that are stuck in that portal and thinking that they get, their next up and coming gig for a high powered team, it's unfortunate because then you're like, well,
Mhm.
should they have just stayed at the university? Should they have just, finished their college degree? Because, what if football really wasn't meant for them, but they had the opportunity to stick around for a team that really gave them the opportunity, that gave them, their scholarship or gave them the recruitment that they needed in order to get out of the situation that they was in back at home. And that was something that I took into account. I had all these offers, especially Miami. I grew up a Hurricane fan, and I got offered literally 15 minutes after I signed to go to Purdue. Signed my letter of intent to go to Purdue. The head coach called my coach and was like, "Hey, look, we had a receiver drop out. We're gonna offer Raheem." And I was like, you know what? I'm already committed. I appreciate it. It would have been a dream of mine, but obviously, guys telling me to go somewhere else. So let's rock that out. And thankfully, I did because, I ended up getting a degree, business management degree. I'm the first person in my family to do that, and now I can look back and be like, hey, look, I did the right decision.
Yeah. Do you ever, though, look back at your time and just wonder, especially in an NIL world, for running backs particularly, like, do you ever just look back and wonder what life would have been like if you were, instead of, whatever the means may have been back then, if somebody could just, like, direct deposit some cash in your account for playing football?
Oh yeah, because I was living off Pell Grant like it was nobody's business. But it was
100%.
honestly, Yeah, honestly though, that NIL stuff like I said, I'm up and down with the portal and the NIL stuff because it's giving guys opportunities to make a good, honest living. Just being in college, yeah, you get a full ride scholarship and then extra bonus of being a good caliber player. I mean, why not? But then that it correlates into the league, right? It transfers over to the league, and now you're expecting, $2 million as a rookie, and really you went undrafted. You know what I mean? And it's kind of tough because your mindset has to switch, and that's the toughest thing mentally for guys that are coming in now.
Your honesty and your insight is so appreciated. Guys, you can check out Throne Sport Coffee. They got a premium charge cold brew that's low calorie, low sugar, and they have a premium charge latte, 10 grams of protein. We love that. Yep. 40% fewer calories than everybody else. So check out sportcoffee.com. Raheem, man, we really appreciate you coming on and joining us. Officially a friend of the show. So when you're ready to decide where you're playing next, you got to come let us know. We'll break the news for the world. We appreciate you, Raheem.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me like always, man. Feels good to loosen up around here. It's the off season.
Let's go.
Grown coffee on. I'm living right now, baby, and it's not too cold.
Let's go. Yeah, and that's the joy of not being freezing. That's what happens there, Raheem. Thanks for the time, man. We appreciate you. All right, coming up next, we're gonna figure out what's going on in the NBA with some triple threat. We'll figure out some of the takes you need.
One school that's doing some work in there right now, very quietly, is the Florida Gators. At the time of us taping this, Florida is sitting there with a top 10 class. And you're like, JD, wait a second. Florida's got a top 10 class? Who have they added? And I think this portal class in general for John Summerall is a good reflection of just the overall vibe, attitude, persona of what you're going to get from John Summerall during his time in Gainesville.
And I've been thinking about the Denver Nuggets here for a little bit. Jamal Murray's gonna have to carry a torch during this program. Like I know it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air looking around, and no furniture around, but hey, he's gonna have to figure it out. What I will say that helps Denver is the return of this version of Aaron Gordon. And I very specifically mean this version of Aaron Gordon. And I know you might have a twinge of concern that he may do too much, but it was good early and they need it now.
Have you had a chance to kind of unpack all of it?
Yeah, I don't know that I have yet. I think it's just another reminder of how wild pro football can be. I've lived it so many times. I mean, I think going back a little over 2 years ago when I tore my Achilles to now, there's been a lot of curveballs and a lot of change. And I was told a long time ago in pro football, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm reminded of that time and again.
How long do you feel like that window is with Lamar, though?
I think you can get 2 more years of Lamar as a locked-in top 5 guy. And then I think after that is when it's like, okay, maybe he ages to more being a top 12 guy, which is still good. Maybe more of a tier 2 guy in my brain. And then it kind of ages from there. Russ went from like a tier 2 guy that fell off to a tier 3, tier 4 guy. You're going to have that drop off at some point in your career.
Oh, Charlotte Hornets are buzzing in January. They became the first team in 17 years to have 2 50-point leads in the same calendar month. They're out there kicking ass, taking names. So we figure we'll break down some NBA storylines you need to know with a little triple threat. This is where we shoot, pass, or dribble on NBA takes. Shoot means we're buying the take. We're all in. We're taking it. Yes, we're having it. Pass means we don't buy it at all. Dribble means give me some more time. I'm not ready to declare one way or the other. Let's start with your Charlotte Hornets. And I say that because Carolina is based in Charlotte. By the way, if they haven't offered you courtside VIP tickets yet, I don't know what they're waiting for. Let's
Not
take a look
yet,
at them.
but I'm waiting to. Anybody at the Charlotte Hornets.
I
let me
mean,
know.
come on.
I don't even need courtside. I just want to go.
No, I
Or a
courtside. All right, you're like, yeah, Carolina. Now you've gone from courtside to a T-shirt. That's all right.
I
this
just
is why
want
Carolina
free
needs
stuff.
an agent. Look, I want courtside seats for Yahoo Sports Daily. Then we bring the whole show there, and we all sit courtside wearing YSD shirts. It's great promo,
Perfect.
and then they put us on the jumbotron. Well, I'm manifesting this of all the things to manifest.
Amazing.
So let's shoot, pass, or dribble. The Hornets have won as many games, 19, as they did all season. They are only 3.5 games back of Atlanta for the final play-in spot. Shoot, pass, or dribble. The Hornets will make the postseason for the first time since 2022. What say you?
Shooting that. Absolutely. 100%. I also don't want to say that it's a coincidence that I moved here in August and now all of a sudden the Hornets have found their stride and also the Panthers were in the postseason this past year, but I'm just saying it's not a coincidence. No, I'm shooting on that. And the statistics are as follows. In the month of January, the Hornets are first in the NBA in offense, sixth in the NBA in defense, and first in net rating. That's not an accident. That's not something that just happens because it's incredibly fluky. Now, is that level sustainable? Probably not. It's probably fair to say that there's at least going to be some ebbs and flows, especially considering how young this team is between Brandon Miller and Concanipple and Melo. But when you've got a guy in Concanipple who has a very strong Rookie of the Year resume so far, when you have a team that's at least found a little bit of consistency, I think it's fair to say that it's at least sustainable enough to find themselves in the postseason. So, yeah, I do think that the Charlotte Hornets will find themselves in the postseason for the first time in several years.
I think that youth is such a huge part of youth is why we trash teams that make the postseason for the first time. Oh, they don't have the experience to make it through the first round. Like, wait, that's what we do. But
Experience
youth
is
can get you
important,
to the postseason. It is in the playoffs. But in the regular season right now, I'm buying a young roster. This average age of the roster coming into the season was a little bit younger than Oklahoma City, for point of reference, anyone not paying attention. So when you see the last 15 games, I think why that's important. It's not just a little subsect. It's not just this is a great way to carve out stats that support what we're saying. I'm shooting the take because I think what you have is a young team that's gelling together with a lot of confidence. And when you are a younger team and you get momentum, boy, you can ride that. You can absolutely ride that. You don't know what you don't know. You don't have any sort of the yucky juju that comes with years of a bad franchise sort of weighing down on you. This is a young team that's out there, frankly, having fun and playing explosive. So winning their last 3 games by an average of 23 points is just, to me, that speaks to the fact that it is gelling together in a way that makes me believe, why not? The East is wide open. 3.5 games, pretty easy to make up. So I'm all in. I'm all in on taking the Hornets to the playoffs. They're fun now. How about this? The Raptors have been surprising teams in the East all season long. They're on a 4-game win streak. They're neck and neck with the Celtics and the Knicks for the number 2 seed in the East. Shoot, pass, or dribble. The Toronto Raptors will be this season's Indiana Pacers surprise team that gets all the way through the East. What are you doing?
Oh, I will dribble on that. I'm not passing it entirely because in this year's East, who says no? Like, this East is so wide open. I love what the Raptors do defensively. Scotty Barnes also has, I think, a very fair resume and a very fair case to be made for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, the Raptors are in every single defensive statistic ranked in the top 10 in the league. Is that enough, though? Can you win 2 to 3 playoff series relying on your defense? Because let's say if the Raptors face the Celtics at some point in the postseason, I'm going to take the Celtics and what they can do offensively and how they shoot the 3 over what I've seen from the Toronto Raptors defensively. But with that being said, what gives me hope and optimism is the fact that Emmanuel quickly has been balling as of late. Back-to-back 20-point games. He dropped a 40-piece against the Warriors last week. Like, if you're getting that level of play from Emmanuel quickly, consistently, and into the postseason, then yeah, sure. Why not the Raptors? Especially when you know that you feel like you can get a pretty consistent offensive output from Brandon Ingram really on any given night. I do have some hesitations about the level of experience from this team because, like we just mentioned, that level of experience is important in the postseason. In order to win enough playoff series, 2 to 3 playoff series to be considered this year's Indiana, you're going to need any given guy to step up on any given night, which I do think the Raptors have. But do we trust that in the postseason? I will dribble on that. I'm a little hesitant to say.
I'll dribble on it because I'm just going to stand up from the mountaintops and admit that I'm developing a wild crush on the Detroit Pistons. They get a weird win last night against the Nuggets, and obviously the Nuggets, right now, no Jokic. I get all of that. But, like, the Pistons, like, for everything that we want to say about what's going right, and there's plenty that is going right for Toronto, I'll look at Detroit and say, okay, they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Like, this is a Detroit team that's averaging more points a game and giving up less points a game than the very Toronto team that we just talked about. This is a Detroit team that is explosive whenever they need to be, wherever they need to be, with the depth that I really like. Like, I'm kind of falling in love with Detroit. It's early, I know, but if we're looking at a wide-open East, we keep saying that the East is wide open, and I'm not saying it isn't. That's why I want to dribble on this. There's plenty of time left in this season. But the more we talk about how wide open it is, the more I'm like, are we sure? Because right now, as we sit right now looking at the standings, you got a 5.5 game lead over the Celtics, 6.5 games over the Knicks and the Raptors. And like I said, 8-2 in their last 10. Detroit is hot right now. They're also a relatively young team, but 34-11 right now. I think it's my crush on Detroit that is preventing me from allowing the concept of the Raptors to become the new Indiana. I think our credit to the East being wide open might be disrespecting the fact that, in my mind, it's early. I think the Pistons might be running away with it. Let's get one more in this one. Okay, so we'll get another one in our triple threat here. Shoot, pass, or dribble. Let's take a look at some West Coast basketball. The hottest team in LA is the LA Clippers. They recently made a local blogger eat his own words, literally, about the team not being able to dig itself out of a 6-21 start. Shoot, pass, or dribble. The Clippers will make a deeper run in the playoffs than the Lakers. Boom, boom, boom.
Quickly, Fitz, if you had to eat one of your tweets, which one would you eat?
Oh, there's plenty of. I mean, you could just look at most Raiders game days, but like also you got to eat it. Doesn't mean you can't sauce it. Put it in a bowl, heat it up a little bit so the paper dissolves. Then throw a little like cheese sauce on it. You won't even taste the paper. Like how many times have when I've maybe been a little bit beyond my normal mentals? How many times have I just gone in and accidentally eaten part of the wrapper while I eat a block of cheese in the middle of the night? So I'm all in on like sauce that thing. Put a little buffalo sauce on it, a little queso on it. Boom, tasty dip.
I'd rather eat a tweet than the Florida State fan that didn't eat the dog poop. Like, there's worse things to eat. I could have a feast of my tweets. Yeah, coward. I dribble on the Clippers because look, you don't win 16 of your last 19 games by accident. Said the same thing about the Hornets. When you're playing this level of basketball at this point in the season, it's not fluky. When you have at least enough of a sample size, it's fair to say like this isn't just an accident. When you're getting that level of play from Kawhi, when James Harden can do literally anything, when you're getting 35 points off the bench like they did last night against the Jazz. I don't trust this Clippers team, though. If I was just going to evaluate this Clippers team in a vacuum of what we've seen over the last month and some change, sure, 100%. I will shoot on that, but I can't do that. That I know what the Clippers were at the beginning of the season, and I can't be very confident in this team, so I will dribble with a whole lot of apprehension.
Yeah, look, I'm dribbling because of that, like the whole concept. And look, I get this. The Clippers are playing really well right now. That's fine. Let's just talk about playoff basketball for a second. If I had to ask everybody, you got to bet your house, your entire every dollar in the bank. You got to bet your house in a playoff performance, and your choice is Luka or Kawhi. Who are you betting on? The answer to that is very simple. We've seen the Kawhi meltdown. As Sarah Spain once famously said, and I've stolen, we've seen Kawhi forget how to basketball in key moments in the playoffs over and over and over again. We've never seen that from Luka. So I feel like at some point you just got to figure it out. And if we're talking about who's going to go deeper into the playoffs between these LA teams, it's really difficult for me to presume that it's going to be Luka, or it's not going to be Luka, I should say, given the fact that we've seen him absolutely take a team to the NBA Finals. We've seen him get out there, and he hasn't had any problem with it. So I believe the Lakers are more poised for a better run, even though I think the Clippers are a better team today, because I've seen poor playoff performance from Kawhi in the past, and that's not something that we can say about Luka. We do have some bonus at the buzzer, some NBA news out there for all of you media heads that love watching. Caitlin Clark will be a special contributor for NBC Sports on February 1st. Lakers-Knicks game from Madison Square Garden. Just when you thought you couldn't get more attention for Lakers-Knicks at the Garden, we get Caitlin Clark, the contributor. This feels like a great move for everybody involved, Caroline.
This game has everything. Yeah, I'm shooting on this. I love this for Caitlin. I think the story of the WNBA over the last several years and women's basketball as a whole is because of the brands that they've been able to build off the court. Of course, it's on the court performance and how electric Caitlin is, how electric Juju Watkins was for USC last season. She's hurt this year, but what you do on the court provides you these opportunities off the court. And Caitlin has just continued to build her brand off the court. The deal that she has with Nike, her line with Nike, Angel Reese's Reebok shoes. And we're seeing more now than ever. Women's basketball players are celebrities. They're going to the Victoria's Secret fashion show. They have millions of followers on social media. And now here is the latest of Caitlin Clark kind of dipping her toes on the broadcasting side of things. So good for her for continuing to build her platform. Good for Caitlin Clark for continuing to kind of diversify her resume, so to speak. I love this for this game, adding even more star power to Lakers Knicks as if it needed more star power. And I love this for Caitlin Clark for getting that much more exposure. It's good for her and it's good for the W.
Yeah. Oh, and just a reminder that Caitlin Clark will always attach eyeballs, and that's what we know. Like, she is a brand bigger than anything right now, and there's a reason she's involved. It's going to be great for all of us in the broadcast. All right, coming up next, let's get a Super Bowl preview and thoughts on everything happening in the league right now from one of the best in the business. Ross Tucker going to join us. We'll get his thoughts on Hall of Fame controversy and what to expect in San Francisco.
Penn State has imported Iowa State. It's the best way I could explain it. Penn State has now taken Rocco Beck. They took RB1. They took wide receiver 1. They took 3 offensive linemen. I detest that this is how college football works at the moment, but it's the way it works at the moment. And that is, when you take a head coach, part of the thinking behind hiring the head coach is who he can bring with him. And in Matt Campbell's case, it was basically whoever he wants.
I'm very fascinated to see which direction they go here, because I think that Roman, this is the deal with him. He's not terrible. He's not offensive as an offensive coordinator, but he can get you to a certain point. You need somebody else to get you to the next point. I think he's done a good job with Herbert, getting him to run more and getting him to push the ball down the field. Now I'd like to see, someone kind of just, again, give him some more quicker options. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see from the next coach.
Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gahn, that needs to be resolved, right? Hamzat Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. But I will accept Hamzat Chimaev versus Fluffy Hernandez. If Fluffy beats Sean Strickland, I'll take either of those. Here's another one of my, but you accept these as secondary.
100%.
Armin Sarukian versus UFC lightweight champion. We cannot just keep having Armin doing grappling matches and eating and all this stuff. He
I'm
must
kind of okay
fight
with
for
it.
No, I'm not.
No,
I know you love it.
You get the first pick in the underrated player draft. Who are you taking?
Jalen Duren has never made an All-Star game. He's never made an All-NBA team. He's gotten so much better as a scorer this year. Jalen Duren is like a legit All-Star this year. And so because everybody talks about the Detroit situation like it's trash and Cade Cunningham, I'm going to say he's still a little bit underrated, and he's my number 1 pick.
Ross Tucker tweets out a text of he and his mom, a text thread between him and his mother, who texts him every time she sees him on TV and hears him on the radio, which is incredible. He's the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You can follow him at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, I mean, let's just we take eyeballs. Your mom watching now, like, it's awesome. That's incredible that your mom supports
Mom.
that way and gives you some. So yeah, so hi, Mom, in case your mom's watching.
So the funny part about that, okay, is we got a lot of snow in Pennsylvania. So my mom knows she can listen to me on sports radio WIP, which is the big station out of Philadelphia. So she's listening to me, but she knows I'm on the sideline for Westwood One, and she knows what I'm wearing from social media. So it's not like I'm on TV. I mean, I'm not doing the game for CBS on TV. I'm doing it on radio for sideline. So she's literally just watching for when guys go out of bounds to see if she can like spot me for a split second or a couple seconds. It's really, I mean, I guess my mom didn't have a lot going on that day. I don't know.
Moms are the
amazing.
best. She's planning her day around seeing maybe even tiny little glimpses of just your shoelace. Moms are just the
So it's
best.
so great. It
Um,
really is. My sister, I sent that thread to my sister and she was dying.
Oh, that's so sweet. I do want to get in. We got inundated with NFL news over the last several days. The latest that just went like wildfire on social media was the report that Bill Belichick has not been voted in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, he's clearly a Hall of Fame coach, and he's clearly a first ballot Hall of Fame coach, and he's in the discussion for being the best coach ever. And he was one of my coaches, and he's terrific. I mean, schematically, I felt like when I was with the Patriots that they had a competitive advantage from a schematic standpoint and from a coaching standpoint. There's no question. What's interesting is talking with some people over the last, 12, 16 hours since the news broke. There's a lot of different things out there. There's a lot of different aspects of this, I would say. One of which is just, I think in life, how you treat people matters. And I think that there are some people that probably didn't like the way they were treated by Belichick at some point. And this was some small way they could get back at him. Whether they would verbalize that or not, I doubt it. But that's one, let's call it a sneaky suspicion. I also think there are people that took the two, cheating scandals very seriously and felt like, that needed to be strongly considered. He needed to be punished for that. I did have somebody say that in 11 years as a head coach in the NFL, when Tom Brady wasn't his starting quarterback, he won one playoff game, which I thought was interesting. And then the biggest thing is I think some people are trying to, I don't want to say game the process, but, you have these senior candidates that they only really get one shot a lot of times as a senior candidate, and they didn't get in the first 15 years after they retired. So you have them in the same category as a coach like Belichick, in the same category as a contributor like Kraft. So you put all that together and they can only vote for three, and I'm sure people had their reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if some people just assumed Belichick was a no-brainer and they wanted to use their three votes on someone else, or maybe they just, they really wanted these players to get in. They had been pushing for LC Greenwood for years or Kenny Anderson. I don't know. I'm just, there's, at least 10 people did not vote for him. And I think those 10 people, it could be some combination of all of those things I just mentioned.
All right, so Ross, let's move to some Patriots adjacent. Obviously, we've got a Super Bowl that we got to prepare for, and that's coming up just around the corner. A lot of people say New England has been lucky this year with the strength of schedule and the way this playoff run has unfolded. How would you assess that? What would you say to that statement?
Yeah, I don't really believe in luck or lucky. I do believe in fortunate. And I do think that they have been fortunate with the regular season schedule. But they still won, 14 games? You know what I mean? Like, you can be fortunate and still not win that many games. And then I think on some level, they were fortunate with just how poorly C.J. Stroud played, and also some of the plays that Jarrett Stidham made, and maybe even Sean Payton's decision not to kick a field goal. But they still made the plays. Both times where Stidham had the turnovers, there was pressure on him. Or even the Sean Payton decision, they could have given up the first down. They still covered the flat and they were all over it and they stopped it. They are a very well-coached team. A lot of guys on that team are playing better than they have at any other point in their careers. And they have found ways to win that game that day, even if it might not always be in the most impressive fashion.
It does feel like this year, Ross, it's the year of the Cinderellas. In college football, we saw Indiana go from losing his program in FBS history to now national champions. Drake May, year 2, Mike Vrabel, year 1 in New England. And Sam Darnold is kind of a Cinderella story in his own right. I think we all cast him off as a bust as a quarterback in the NFL. Now he's going to the Super Bowl. What have you made of Sam Darnold's career trajectory?
Well, I got to tell you, it was so cool, as you guys are showing right now, to interview him after the game. And not just him, but Cooper Kupp and JSN and Mike McDonald. Such a cool part of the job to be able to talk to these guys really in the midst of the best moment of their life. How often do you get a chance to talk to somebody during the best moment of their life to that point, which is so cool. But in particular, Darnold has played for 5 teams. And as a fellow member of the 5-team club, I think it is wonderful that a guy like this has been able to get his team to the Super Bowl. And I think it'd be awesome if he won it. I love stories of perseverance and overcoming adversity. And I also love just nuking the narratives that are out there. And we all know the narratives about Sam Darnold and won't play well in a big game and can't. Well, how was Sunday? Sunday was the NFC Championship. That was a pretty big game, and Darnold played fantastic. They won. They deserved to win. It was awesome. I'm thrilled for him. It's a good life lesson for all of us out there.
So, Ross, let's get to some of the coaching changes because we've seen 10 openings, which is just astronomical. And I keep thinking about what we're talking about with the Super Bowl. Mike McDonald in year 2, Mike Vrabel in year 1. What does this accelerated success of new coaches in certain places do to the way that the owners are going to view this crop of coaches that are coming in with patience and rebuilds?
Well, I think we're seeing it in college football and in the NFL. I don't think as many of the head coaches that got fired in college football this year, you go right down the line, whoever it is, James Franklin's one that pops into my mind right away, but you could say Brian Kelly, whatever. I don't think that happens without a guy like Cignetti in year 2 winning a national championship and showing that you can do that. And these schools believing, hey, we're LSU, we're Penn State. If Indiana can do that in 2 years, why can't we? I think you're seeing that in the NFL a little bit. The success this year of Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson and obviously Mike Vrabel, I think that was part of the decisions in Baltimore and in Buffalo to move on from John Harbaugh and Sean McDermott and say, you know what? If Vrabel can get him over the hump in year 1, maybe we can get somebody else to get us over the hump here, which we haven't been able to do in John Harbaugh's case in a long time, in Sean McDermott's case ever.
You bring up Sean McDermott. We got some news yesterday that Joe Brady, former offensive coordinator, has gotten the promotion to be their next head coach. Is he the guy to get them over the hump, to get to a Super Bowl and to ultimately win a Super Bowl?
So there's no way any of us would know the answer to that, obviously. But I will say it's a head-scratching hire on some level. Because the thought process is, we're not getting it done with McDermott. We got to change things up. The status quo isn't going to work. We got to get somebody in here that can get us to the Super Bowl. And then you promote from within? I mean, you already had Joe Brady. It felt like they wanted to shake things up, but then when they went to go get a new head coach, instead they opted for comfort, continuity, familiarity, which it felt like that's what they were trying to change with McDermott. So I can see why Bills fans aren't enamored with it. Look, he might be awesome. He might be the next McVay, or he might be terrible. None of us really know. I will just say 36 years old to be the head coach, but still be the offensive play caller, but doing all the clock management, game management stuff, that is a lot. That is a lot on Joe Brady's shoulders. And I think you're asking a lot for him to make those critical decisions in playoff games that get this team over the hump.
Your big point there is none of us know. I will remind everybody, go back and look at the rankings every year of best head coaching hires, and see how wrong most of us are every single time. Ross, obviously we love talking to you, but we also love talking to you about myfrontpagestory.com. Tell everybody what you got going on there.
All right, listen. Valentine's Day is coming up. It's the Super Bowl of love, okay? And whether your significant other admits it or not, they care. Oh, that doesn't matter. Just get me flowers. And they're full of it. They want something cool. They want something unique. This would be the best Valentine's Day gift they've ever gotten. You talk to a writer for 10 minutes or fill out an email if you want. Tell them how amazing your significant other are. They write this incredible story. Looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper, framed, beautiful pictures. And as she's opening it up, to be able to say, I wanted something special for you, so I had a story written about you. That sounds amazing. And yes, I have gotten my mom, who we were talking about earlier, my sister and I got her one for her 70th birthday. Just make sure you tell the writer, I never thank her enough for all the little things she does. They will cry. You will win. myfrontpagestory.com. myfrontpagestory.com.
Ross, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your expertise. Enjoy the Super Bowl, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us again.
Always my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Great stuff from Ross Tucker there. All right, we were just talking about the Bills. What do we make of Joe Brady, and what's it mean for the actual expectations next year? We'll tell you.
At the very top of my list, we need finality to Aspinall versus Gunn.
Yeah.
We need finality to
let's
this.
go, Joe. Have to.
I just want to see this fight play out because guess what? It was a very entertaining fight and it was playing out in a way that I think a lot of people didn't think it would play out. So I need to see that fight. I have to see that fight. The division needs to see that fight. They both need to see that fight. They both earned it and deserved it, and we can't move on without that fight.
Do the Spurs still take Dylan Harper over Con Knipple and VJ Edgecombe?
I think for me, if I was to do it all over again, I would still take the best pick available, and that is Dylan Harper. I mean, you see he just is such an elite creator.
Prior to the draft, Mo, I was pretty consistent in saying that I would trade down and take a Con Knipple. Con at 4, I still think would have been the best possible outcome for San Antonio, and I feel that way even more strongly at this point.
All football teams are dams. Some of them have a ton of cracks. Some of them have a few cracks. It's all about who faces enough water pressure from their schedule to expose the cracks. Most of the time when you're playing in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going to face several tests that will expose your cracks. I don't think Ohio State did this year. They faced Texas early in the year, and they just never faced enough pressure to expose the cracks.
Did you notice that the scoring totals had fallen in the new year, that the New Year's resolution apparently was to bring physicality back?
A couple of years ago when it was all of a sudden everybody scored 50, 60, 70. And then like the air went out of the ball for a month. And it was like in the middle of the season, the way the rules were being called kind of changed and scoring started to drop.
Look, to be fair, Dan, it could be, hey, everyone just magically figured out how to play legal defense.
Greg Rosenthal tweeted out, if I'm Joe Brady, I am absolutely trying to hire Sean McDermott as my DC. It's good scheme fit with the players they have. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but it gave everybody a good laugh and a reminder that
It'd be smart.
Caroline, I can't say this loud enough. The more I think about this, the Bills made it clear. They looked around. They had their consultants come in. They looked at everything in the building. They talked to everybody. They did a deep dive analysis on why they haven't gotten to the Super Bowl in this window. And they decided the answer is Sean McDermott and Sean McDermott alone. Because everybody else is getting promoted. Like when they fire one guy and everybody else gets more money, I feel like at some point you end up with this sort of a result. So I'm a little bit stunned still to see that there was no true change in Buffalo other than just deciding that McDermott is the problem.
Yeah, it feels very conflicting, right? That you acknowledge Sean McDermott is the issue, and then you promote his offensive coordinator. You clearly say that something needs to change, that we cannot run back what we ran back the last 7 years. And look, I agree with that. I didn't totally entirely disagree with the idea that, look, if we go back, run back next season what we had this past year, that it's just going to feel a little anticlimactic, that we have to change something. I don't disagree with that thought process. What's the definition of insanity? But this feels like you're just going back into the well. This doesn't feel like this is a massive sweeping change. This doesn't feel like it would instill a lot of confidence in Bills fans, or for the Bills to be able to finally break through, if you're just promoting the same guy that's been in the building for falling short of expectations, or falling short of your ultimate goal of getting to the Super Bowl. Well, I mean, Joe Brady's 36 years old. Joe Brady's never been a head coach before, ever, at any level. I feel like that 2019 season at LSU is propping Joe Brady up more than any one season has ever propped up any coach that I've ever seen in the National Football League. Joe Brady wasn't even the offensive coordinator of that team. Let's not forget. Let's not get that twisted. Steve Ensminger was the offensive coordinator of that team. That's not to say that Joe Brady can't be successful, or won't be successful, or isn't the guy to get him to get the Bills to the Super Bowl. I just don't know why anyone would have any sort of confidence that he is that.
1,000%. We have breaking news. Want to get everybody this just in. According to Adam Schefter, ESPN sources, the Cleveland Browns are hiring former Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken as their next head coach. So with only 3 jobs left open, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Cardinals, and much speculation about who the guy would be in Cleveland, they've taken Todd Monken. Todd, famously the offensive coordinator for the Ravens. Before that, a very well-regarded offensive coordinator for Georgia's national championship football teams. He is somebody that obviously has a lot of respect in the way that he runs offenses, but we haven't seen him in this role, Caroline. So this is a moment for him to take the jump and take the leap and see if he can do with the Browns what Kevin Stefanski couldn't.
Yeah, I look very shocked by this hire, to be honest with you. Not to say that it's a bad one. Just feel like there were so many names floating around that gave a lot of Browns fans a whole lot of optimism. And Todd Monken's name wasn't necessarily one of those. Again, not to say that he can't be successful, or he won't be successful, or he can't go 9-8 and make the postseason with the Browns. I'm intrigued by why the Cleveland brass thought that he was the guy. Is it because he has, unwavering belief in Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns organization wanted someone to believe in their quarterback? I don't know, possibly. Is it because of what they've seen from him in Baltimore? Like you mentioned, in his time with Georgia, won back-to-back national championships with a former JUCO quarterback in Stetson Bennett. He certainly has enough skins on the wall. He certainly has a large enough resume to say he's a guy that you can trust. But I don't know if I would necessarily identify Todd Monken as somebody who can do what Kevin Stefanski couldn't. And it's because I never believed head coach was the issue in Cleveland.
Yeah, well, and some of this, look, Todd Monken is part of the reason that Jim Harbaugh is no longer the coach in Baltimore, at least according to multiple reports. There were conversations about whether or not they were willing to get rid of Todd Monken as their offensive coordinator, whether that was a rub for Lamar. We don't really know. We haven't gotten a lot of insight on that, but we do know that Harbaugh was adamant that he wouldn't be making that change, and that's part of why the Ravens, in fact, moved on. So somebody that Harbaugh certainly respected, but the building kind of wanted to move past. Now, also should be noted here, Shefty pointing out, defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz is still under contract to Cleveland. The team wants him to stay. Caroline, this is not a Browns take. This is a universal take. I'm always nervous when a team tries to tell a head coach who to keep as a coordinator. I rarely see that work. I rarely think that is the effective strategy. Part of what a coach is paid to do is to come in and decide how he wants his culture to look all the way across the room. How many times have we talked to different players, and when we've asked the question, even since our show started in August, what's the difference between a bad team and a good team? And the answer is everybody's on the same page. Jim Schwartz coming in as the defensive coordinator, is that going to be on the same page as Todd Monken? I don't know. So what we do know is that Monken is going to go from working with Lamar to working with Shedeur, Deshaun, whatever else their plan seems to be at quarterback. But if Schwartz stays, I think that's got to be one of the things that we consider when we look at the initial staff built and the process of building that staff. How much of this is Todd Monken's staff from day one, and how much of it is just the Browns asking somebody to come in and do what they want him to do.
Yeah, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's a little how I felt about the Joe Brady hire in Buffalo. You want change, but not too much change, so you'll just promote the offensive coordinator. In Cleveland, if they wanted Jim Schwartz to stick around, then they would have made him the head coach. But they didn't do that because that would have felt like a very uninspiring hire. If they wanted to hire Jim Schwartz as their next head coach, they could have done that a long time ago. They didn't, for a reason. But then you can't eat your cake too and have him stick around with your new head coach. If that's Todd Monken's decision in its entirety, 1000% his decision, then great, wonderful. Everybody can move forward in lockstep and everyone is in agreement. And you also get consistency at the defensive coordinator position. The defensive side of the ball is really, I would say, the greatest glimmer of hope for Cleveland Browns fans to at least be relevant and win enough games next season. But to your point, yeah, it's Todd Monken's decision. You don't hire a coach and say, okay, yeah, but you're going to do what we say. You hire a coach because you trust that coach entirely to build his staff. I believe so much in continuity of power, of clear divided roles. The GM picks the players. The coach picks his coaching staff and coaches the team. You don't get to keep pieces in place and tell your new head coach, okay, now play nice with this guy. If Jim Schwartz sticks around, it should because it is Todd Monken's decision and nobody else's.
Yeah, Monken, by the way, notably in an interview done January 8th on the Ryan Ripken show, said flat out, quote, I didn't coach Lamar well enough. I didn't have as good a relationship as I could have. And when asked about what would happen if he didn't get a job somewhere, he said, if I don't get a job, then maybe that's my calling. So certainly he seemed to have peace with the way everything ended in Baltimore. And maybe you learn from that. Maybe you walk away from that experience with Lamar saying, hey, I came into an NFL experience from college football. I tried to handle it like it was college football, and it's a much different beast.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't be the first person to have an adjustment in that situation. I want to point out the last time he was a head coach was at Southern Miss in 2015, where the Golden Eagles finished 9-5. So we just have no idea what this is going to look like in the NFL. I mean, for the success that he had with Georgia, and for the success that Lamar had, Lamar did have an MVP season with him. So I'm not going to turn around and call him a failure, but we did see a substantial drop-off in that offense this year. So it's just an interesting hire. After 23 days, I think what happens is the longer these things go on, and the Brown search took so long, the longer these things go on, the more you just want something that's going to make it feel like the wait was worth it. I'm not sure Todd Monken does that for the fan base, but Caroline, I'll remind everybody, Steelers fans hated their hire. There were some Titans fans that didn't like their hire. Now we've got Browns fans that may or may not like their hire. Bills fans don't seem to like their hire. Go up and down the list of the 10 openings we have. How many fan bases are actually going to like the guy that they've got in this situation? I think it's just a reminder that fans have these lofty expectations that somebody's going to come in and fix everything overnight. And to do that, they want a name they've heard for a long time. But the answer we all really have is, I don't know. Todd Monken could turn out to be a great coach. He could turn out to be yet another tombstone in the graveyard of coaches of Cleveland that have failed.
I am always of the belief that it's more important to win the hire than it is to win the press conference. I think Liam Cohen's probably the perfect example of that. We still make fun of his introductory press conference in Jacksonville, and he got the Jags to the postseason and made Trevor Lawrence look like an MVP candidate in the final month and some change of the season. Looks like Liam Cohen's going to have some success in Jacksonville. So just because immediately right after the hire we're not overly thrilled doesn't mean that Todd Monken is not going to be successful with the Cleveland Browns. But to your point, if there is a layer of uncertainty with a head coaching hire, you at least want it to come with some excitement, right? The Davis Webbs, the Dragons of the world, the Grant Udinskis of the world, even Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills. There's this sense of uncertainty, but also this sense of hope with some of these young offensive gurus. Todd Monken is an uncertainty, but doesn't come with that same level of intrigue, mystery, and excitement that maybe some of these younger candidates do. Again, I go back to, that doesn't mean he won't be successful, but it does feel uninspiring.
The thing that worries me the most is a divided locker room. If they are going to keep Schwartz, and Schwartz has a defensive side of the ball that loves him, and he's the man, and you had this sort of holdover portion, and then new guy comes in that's sort of the boss, but is he the boss? And like, are the defensive sides going to really listen to him, or are they going to hang out with Schwartz? Like, these are the small things that feel like I'm overreacting. But again, the more we talk to former players post what went wrong, the number of times we hear what Raheem Mostert told us earlier today about my beloved Raiders. Everybody in the building just wasn't on the same page. We heard that how many times? When you keep a coordinator and bring somebody new in, I'm not sure how you keep everybody on the same page. I know we'll have more to break down tomorrow morning. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Come back for Yahoo Sports Daily tomorrow.
Give us your breakout fighters of 2026.
You're not going to believe that. Number one is Manchester top teams, Atiba Gutierrez. I think he's going to be the next big African star. Already is.
He's chiseled out of stone. He's got unbelievable power, great skill, huge for the weight class. Very, very impressive. And again, you speak to the guys over at Manchester Top Team, they could not be more excited about his potential.
Usually I would dunk on a team that's 8-9 going to the playoffs. You don't deserve it. For Carolina, celebrate it. This was a big step forward season. However you got there, you wanted some hope. You wanted something to be happy about. You backed into it, fine. I don't care. The Panthers did have some quality wins this year. They did seem to be making progress. So for the Panthers, hey, step forward, good job, celebrate it. It's a really nice year for the Carolina Panthers to win this division no matter how they did it.
I don't know how anyone could expect Kalen DeBoer to get Alabama back to where Nick Saban had it, because he's not going to. I would suggest to you that had Nick Saban stuck around at Alabama, he wasn't getting Alabama back to where Nick Saban had it a decade prior. And that's Nick literal Saban. I don't think Kirby Smart's getting Georgia back to what Georgia was a few years ago. Dabo's not going to get Clemson back to what Clemson was. It's almost like the entire world has changed.
Oh, let's get to another factory of sadness. The Atlanta Falcons, who fired Raheem Morris after 2 8-9 seasons.
You got Bijan Robinson, you got Drake London. That was what Raheem Morris said when they asked him, why did you take this job?
Yep.
And you still got those guys. And you still got those two guys.